why didn't they just create a state? It sounds like common sense. It may also be the wrong question entirely. I recently watched some old footage of a young Benjamin Netanyahu, then going by Ben Nitay, and it was kind of eerie seeing him already in the late 1970s with cool fluency and rhetorical force
No, I don't believe it is.
lay out positions that would come to define his politics for nigh half a century to come. Now, in my last video, I argued that we live in a world where nationalism is the game every people has been forced to play, and so both Israelis and Palestinians are equally entitled to engage in it. Of course, there are plenty of people who deny the legitimacy of Israeli nationhood, from the river to the sea and all that. But there are also those who deny the legitimacy of Palestine as a nation, among them a certain Prime Minister of Israel. So, here are 2 points from Mr. Nitay that portray Palestinian nationalism as less legitimate than Jewish nationalism, or maybe even as wholly illegitimate. Point number 1, there already is a Palestinian state, Jordan. This was an argument frequently advanced by Israeli right-wing figures, especially post-1967, and it's clever in a way that's almost too clever by half. Yes, a large portion of the Jordanian population has family roots in historic Palestine. But Jordan never defined itself as a Palestinian state, and most Palestinians did not see it that way. The Hashemite monarchy, in fact, violently clashed with Palestinian organizations during Black September in 1970. Palestinians, for their part, increasingly came to define their national identity in terms of the land west of the Jordan River, i.e., the very land the Zionist movement had also defined as its exclusive homeland. So, while Netanyahu's claim might seem plausible to someone unfamiliar with the history, it dodges the actual issue. A people cannot be told by others where their national identity ought to apply. Point number 2. For 20 years, the Arabs had the West Bank and Gaza and didn't create a state. This is another talking point that gets repeated to this day. It's true that between 1948 and 1967, Egypt controlled Gaza and Jordan annexed the West Bank. It's also true that no independent Palestinian state was created during that time. But this omits 2 key facts. First, Palestinian nationalism was still inchoate and politically marginalized in those years. The Arab states, particularly Jordan and Egypt, had no interest in fostering an independent Palestinian entity that could challenge their own authority. And second, statelessness was not a choice, but a condition imposed by both regional powers and external ones. The Palestinians were pawns in a wider Cold War and pan-Arab game, not agents freely refusing a state of their own. Again, Netanyahu's line has rhetorical sharpness, but it obscures far more than it reveals. It lays the intellectually dishonest trap of imagining that history always flows from deliberate agency rather than from constrained possibility. Palestinian nationalism didn't spring forth as a unified, coherent movement in 1947 because it couldn't. The conditions weren't there. And it's not that those conditions were simply absent, it's that they were actively denied or undermined by more powerful forces, both regional and global. To lay this out in a little more detail, Jordan had clear territorial ambitions in the West Bank and saw an independent Palestinian state as a threat to Hashemite authority. Egypt was more interested in asserting leadership over the Arab world than in fostering a grassroots Palestinian sovereignty. And these tensions between Arab states weren't incidental. They often ran deeper than their shared opposition to Zionism. Some Arabs even wanted to reforge the historical Greater Syria, spanning not just modern-day Syria, but Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, the Sinai Peninsula, Cyprus, the Avars region of Iran, and as far north as certain parts of Turkey. Other Arabs very much wanted to prevent such a forging. This coloured how Jordan and others approached the 1948 war against the fledgling Israeli state. The Arab League was never a monolith, and its fractured interventions often left Palestinians exposed, betrayed, or instrumentalized. The Cold War then layered over all of this. The Soviet Union at first supported the creation of Israel, partly to undermine British influence in the region, but quickly shifted to backing Arab nationalist regimes. The United States came to see Israel as a reliable ally in a region where Arab nationalism increasingly tilted left. The result was that Palestinian aspirations were shaped and often warped by Cold War proxy dynamics. So when someone like the young Netanyahu says, in effect, why didn't they just make a state between 1948 and 1967? He's not asking a real historical question. He's offering a prosecutorial, rhetorical device. Because the honest answer would be, they couldn't. The land was under foreign control, their institutions were underdeveloped or suppressed, their leadership was fragmented, and the regional powers preferred them as rhetorical ammunition rather than as autonomous agents. In that sense, Netanyahu does of course have a point. The professed solidarity with the Palestinian cause has often been hypocritical. Later, groups like the PLO would claw out political space in exile, first in Jordan, then in Lebanon and Tunisia, but always under enormous pressure, often literally at gunpoint, from the very regimes they supposedly shared cause with. To acknowledge all this is not to paint Palestinian nationalism as pristine or uncomplicated. It, like all nationalisms, has its myths, its hard edges, its sins. But it is to say, this is a nationalism born under siege from nearly every direction, even from ostensible allies. That it still exists in some form is a testament to the persistence of a people who have had every incentive to give up but haven't. And to deny its legitimacy on the grounds that it was relatively late to form or inconsistently expressed is to blame the wound for not healing fast enough while the knife is still in.